Adams here. We are back for another week of Read Along with Elaine. We are reading from The Blue Witch, right? But before we get started, we're going to give some shout outs, all right? First shout out, this week I'm going to be wearing t-shirts from all the elementary schools that I got to visit in the last few months. Today's t-shirt is from Ridgewood Elementary in Winterville, North Carolina. So hi guys, if you're out there watching, thanks so much for having me to your school. All right, next shout out is going to be a really lovely young lady that I happen to adore. Her name is Sutton. So hello, Sutton. Miss Elaine says hi. I hope you're doing well in Pennsylvania. And my last shout out is for a young man named Joshua. Joshua, I hope you're feeling better today. I know you've been sick for a while, and so I hope you're doing well. And I just want you to know that Miss Elaine is thinking about you today as well, all right? So guys, we are going to be picking up from chapter 5, right? Now, we left off in chapter 4 where Abigail and Hugo were running for their lives in the woods, and they just barely make it back into the walls of the Turkana fortress before the beast practically devours them, all right? So let's see what happens now that Abigail has tried to sneak back in. She's going to try to sneak into the dining hall and hope nobody notices, all right? Here we go. Abigail snuck into the dining hall as the other girls were finishing their lunch. If anyone asked why she'd missed her morning classes, she would simply say she'd had an upset stomach. Minxie tapped her on the shoulder. Here, she held out Abigail's book bag. You left this behind this morning. Abigail was about to thank her when the girl's eyes widened and she fled. Abigail Tarkana, a voice boomed. I hope you have an explanation for why you missed magical maths this morning. Abigail turned to see Madame Vex bearing down on her. Sorry, Madame Vex, I wasn't feeling well. Madame Vex gasped. Is that a tear in your uniform? She pointed at the jagged rip in Abigail's skirt. Yes, ma'am. Abigail twitched the fabric out of sight. Sorry, I took a walk in the gardens to get some air and it snagged on a bush. That's a lie, Andera said, marching up with Gloria and Nellie at her side. She went into the swamps. We saw her. Madame Vex's eyes flared. Is that true, Abigail? Abigail tried to think of something, anything to say, but Gloria jumped in. It's true, Madame Vex. She wouldn't listen when we told her not to. Yeah, Nellie added. She just barged out the gate and said the rules were stupid. She waggled her hands as she said the last part. Abigail groaned as Madame Vex's face turned bright red. The entire dining hall went silent as the teacher grabbed Abigail by the ear, pinching it painfully. We will see what Madame Hestera has to say about that. The girls let out excited oohs. Madame Hestera was the leader of the Tarkana Coven and the most powerful witch alive. Madame Vex marched Abigail out the dining hall and down a long corridor toward a towering set of double doors. She was taking Abigail to the great hall where the witches convened their councils. Abigail had never been inside, but she'd heard rumors spread by the older girls about a giant spider that lived there and ate witchlings who misbehaved. The rest of her classmates trailed behind, eager to see what punishment awaited her. Madame Vex nodded briskly at the pair of Balfin guards dressed in black uniforms standing outside. They quickly opened the doors and stepped aside. Madame Vex dragged her in through the doors and finally released Abigail's ear. The doors swung shut behind them, locking out the disappointed gaggle of girls. Abigail rubbed her ear to get the blood flowing again and looked around in awe. Marble columns rose up to support high ceilings. Ornately woven tapestries hung on the stone walls. One of them showed a bearded man kneeling in front of a sun stitched with jagged streaks of red. On the raised dais at the far end of the room, a gray-haired woman sat in a high-backed chair. Her black gown was buttoned to her neck. One hand rested on a cane, its knobby emerald tip just visible between her knuckles. A large black curtain hung behind the dais. A pair of witches sat on either side of her, their superior air marking them as members of the High Witch Council. Abigail recognized Indira's mother, Melistra, from her visits to the creche. Melistra scared Abigail. She'd overheard the woman yelling at old Nan once, shaking one of the nursery's record books and reducing the poor woman to tears. There was no sign of the spider, so maybe it was just a rumor. Madame Beck stopped in front of the dais and bowed low. The headmistress elbowed Abigail, and she dropped into a clumsy curtsy. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Hestera demanded, pursing wrinkled lips. "This witchling ran into the swamps, even though she knew it was against the rules," Madame Bex reported. "She did she?" Hestera's eyes narrowed as she studied the girl. "What's your name, child?" "Abigail," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Her knees were shaking so badly she was afraid she was going to fall down. "Who is your mother?" Hestera demanded. Her name was Penelope," Abigail dutifully answered. Hestera frowned. "Penelope? I don't recall a witch by that name." Before Abigail could explain that she'd passed away shortly after Abigail was born, a hairy, black appendage poked out from behind the curtains. Hestera caught her gaze and gave a sly smile, clapping her hands sharply. The curtain fell away, revealing a giant web that held a spider the size of a carriage. It was nimbly spinning more webbing as it moved. Red and yellow bands encircled each leg. It had a set of jaws that could swallow Abigail whole. "Did you know that Arcanas were named after this lovely creature?" Madame Hestera said, waving a hand at her pet. "We call her the Great Mother. Would you like to see her up close?" Abigail shook her head, shifting her feet to take a step back. Madame Bex clamped a hand on her shoulder, stopping her. "How should she be punished?" "The child should be expelled," Melistra cut in, her voice like chipped ice. "She broke the rules." Abigail fought back tears. "Expelled? For running in the swamps?" Madame Vex cleared her throat. "It was her first infraction, Melistra. Surely not cause for her to be expelled." Melistra started to argue, but Madame Hestera rapped her cane sharply on the dais. "Enough interruptions. Detention after school every day for a week." Abigail's spirits sank. Detention every day? She wouldn't be able to meet Hugo, which meant she wouldn't get any answers to her strange witchfire. "And I'll expect you to keep an eye about you, Madame Vex," Hestera added in a low voice. "With that spy we caught snooping around, we can't be sure what Odin is up to." Madame Vex bowed her head, backing away. Abigail followed, looking over her shoulder one last time. Melistra's disdainful gaze locked on her, sending a frisson of fear up her spine. Outside, the girls scattered as the door opened. Madame Vex clapped her hands. "Come, girls, hurry along. You'll be late to positively potent potions. You don't want Madame Radisher to mark you tardy." The girls squealed, fleeing toward the classroom. Abigail started to follow when Madame Vex said, "Madame Marisa tells me you are failing spectacular spells, that your magic hasn't come in yet." Abigail said nothing, afraid that if she lied, Madame Vex would know. The headmistress sniffed. "Perhaps you will be expelled anyway." With those words, she waved Abigail off to class. Oh, and that's the end of chapter 5. I hope you guys liked it. I really liked that chapter. It's kind of interesting. We learn a little bit more about the Tarkana Witch Academy. They go into the Great Hall where Madame Vex has hauled her off to face the High Witch Council because Abigail broke the rules, running off into the swamp, which is a really big no-no. And she meets Melistra, which is Indira's mother, and we get a sense that Melistra doesn't really care for her because she wants her expelled, for goodness sake, just for going out into the swamps. But what's really interesting, what we learn, we learn about the spider. Did you guys like the spider? It's a really big, nasty, hairy spider. That's kind of they call her the Great Mother, and she's kind of like their mascot, I guess, right? It's kind of their mascot. I mean, Ridgewood has the sharks, I think, right? So they've got the Tarkana spider. And so that's kind of scary. But what's really interesting is Madame Hystera says, "And I'll expect you to keep an eye about you with that spy we caught snooping around." There's a spy. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to hear more about this spy. All right, so guys, we're going to leave it off here. Tomorrow we're going to do chapter 6. All right, so in the meantime, here's what you guys can do. All right, go to the link in the description of the video and click on the worksheets and do them. Have some fun, all right? Learn a little bit more about what's going on inside the book. You can send those worksheets to your teacher. You can send them to me. They'll be fun to share, fun for your parents to look at. Keep up with the story as we go along. And in the meantime, otherwise, I want you guys to get out there, have some fun, play outside if you can, read some books, wash your hands, of course, stay healthy, stay well, stay happy, and I will be back tomorrow to read to you guys some more, all right? Elena